Oh wow, we have another visitor, Dr. Nish Khullar.
Hi.
Welcome to the show. Okay, we have Dr.
We have
Sago.
a whole panel of
Hey, we got a
doctors.
whole panel of doctors. I need to get out of this group because see, lawyers.
He's a
Cannot,
lawyer.
I'm a lawyer. Lawyers cannot contribute anything to society. We just take. I mean, it's kind of like the way it is. It's the nature of the beast. So, Dr. Nish, what city are you beaming in from right now?
I'm from New Delhi, India.
New Delhi. Okay. All right. Great. What's your specialty? I'm familiar with Gupta and Sagu, but not you.
I'm a nephrologist and kidney transplant physician. Yeah.
There you go. Okay, Dr. Markowitz is also in nephrology, and he also does a lot of research. Graduated from Harvard University, and has been doing this since the dawn of man. So, and he has some opinions relating to nephrology, which, for us lawyers who forgot to take, let's see, I forgot my pathology classes when I was in law school because they didn't offer it. I have to go always look it up on the internet. What is it? Okay, it's kidney disease. Got it. All right. So the thing is, Dr. Markowitz, share us what your thoughts are, because apparently you even have patents in the area relating to nephrology. Is that correct?
Yeah, I mean, Dr. Khullar, I'm sure you don't have any idea who I am, and that's because the ISN has wanted to keep it that way. But India is actually on the launching pad for the worst COVID epidemic, the worst economic shutdown. I mean, India is really, you guys are a democracy, so you can't just jail everybody like China did. And you're also densely packed, and so many people are subsistence economically that they can't stop working. So, so I should be talking to you guys as essentially the clinical trial collaborators that I've been looking for. So my approach to COVID-19 is that it's a mast cell disorder, and so you can prevent it with mast cell drugs, and you can treat it with steroids. And the other thing is, after this is all over, I would dearly love to prevent dialysis in India, because there's no way India can afford to dialyze, 20 or 30 million people.
True, and that's quite relevant, and I think that's something which scares us too here in India. I mean, obviously, if rich countries like US are struggling to cope up with COVID-19, so you can imagine what is going on in our minds here in India. So our problems are different. We know we are a few weeks behind the others, and what is happening in the other parts of the world actually scares us. So we are here to learn from the others who have more experience, and then obviously we are evolving, and we are trying to formulate some policies which we believe, and hopefully they are able to help our countrymen.
Right. The great advantage of India is that you can't afford to just raise stock prices for Gilead. You can't afford to wait for the vaccines or remdesivir. You actually have to take public health directly in your hand and save your people. Which there are not many countries that are pushed to that. I mean, look at Europe. Europe has been focusing on ventilators. They haven't thought of.
We've learned that ventilators can be just as dangerous for a person in this type of situation, and that the survival rate can be very, very low. And I started reading it. I'm no medical person, but I have a lot of medical problems and have had to go on a lot of things in my lifetime. And so I understand some of the terminologies, like your red blood cells and the way that they will reproduce and go through the body, creating oxygen. And you can become ischemic, from what I gather, because you're not getting enough oxygen to the rest of your organs, based on what I've been reviewing. It could be wrong, but
no, you're right. You're right. Hypoxia, low oxygen in your body, it's huge problem at the end of anaphylaxis. or anaphylactoid reaction. Once you go on the ventilator, you have a 70% chance of dying.
Wow,
So-
and that's insane. And I think that they're just using the ventilators to help people just have more quality of life before they die. Because there is such a low success rate in surviving. But to understand that it's not allowing the rest of your body in the organs to receive the oxygen it needs. I understand what happens because I had a fatal incident from that, near fatal incident, and all my organs shut down. I'm lucky to be alive because that happened to me. So, you know, why are we using ventilators? I'm just curious.
Well, you see, I know what you are implying, but then if you come across few people who could actually get a new lease of life while being on ventilators, that changes the whole perspective. You would have lost plenty of these people if you had not put them on ventilators at the right time. But of course, the situation is a bit different with COVID-19. We don't know what is the best way forward, because what we have learned so far is it's better to delay putting these patients onto ventilators till as long as possible, because it's a double-edged sword for them. But then, should they be requiring ventilators to sustain life? And you see, till the time you tide over that unfavorable period, which could be anywhere between 5 to 7 those crucial days, you don't know how many would you have lost if you had decided not to put them in ventilators. So I totally agree with you. When you lose these patients, you believe as if you were the villain. You put them on something which was very nasty, and which actually caused a lot of trauma to everyone, not just the patient, but to the family members as well. But if you save even one, I think your everything is rewarded.
I think, is there, let me ask you this, because you guys are the doctors and the scientists. Would there be a way, if you know that it is depleting the red blood cells to go into the other organs to help produce the oxygen that they need, and potentially it could cause ischemic situations? Could there be something else you do with the body once you put them on a ventilator so that you avoid that situation where, or maybe you promote other things going on in the other organs while they're on the ventilator so that you avoid that ischemic situation?
Well, you see, as I said, the whole science is evolving. We don't know too much about COVID-19 as of today. Every day we are learning something new. There are a few controversies associated with what we know so far, and then we come back and there's a 360 turn. So many times, this is what is happening. What we know now is that probably this virus takes away the oxygen. It depletes the cell of its oxygen content, and then comes in the iron factor as well, the iron factor. And then eventually, so that's why the theory was that if hydroxychloroquine indeed was helpful, it probably is acting via this pathway. And I'm not advocating the use of hydroxychloroquine because we don't have robust data. But then till such time, this discussion is going to go on and on. But answering your question, if we had not put these patients on ventilator as the life-saving measure, God knows how many, as I said, we would have lost without giving it a wholehearted effort.
I mean, and it goes back to, does the benefit outweigh the risk challenge? And I agree with that 100%. If I'm there, can't breathe, and I'm at the end of death, I'm gonna take that one last straw myself. And so I agree. But you two were talking about kidney dialysis and maybe changing the world and medicine and communicating with each other. Explain to me, what is the ISN? You said something, Dr. Moskowitz. What is this? I don't understand.
This is the International Society of Nephrology. And unfortunately, our annual conference, which was supposed to be towards the end of last month, got postponed. And we were actually looking forward, every one of us, to be there at Abu Dhabi, but everything got cancelled. So what David was referring to is something very interesting here in the Indian context. You see, so far, before COVID-19 came into picture, we in India were struggling against the menace of diabetes and what diabetes is doing to the kidneys of Indian patients. Now imagine, I don't want to scare you as a nephrologist, so let me sensitize you to the kind of problem we are talking about. India is about 1.3 billion population. Now, what we realized was that the prevalence, now I'm giving you a mind-boggling figure, 10% of the Indian population is suffering from chronic kidney disease. We are looking at about what 100 million of Indian people suffering from some degree, be it a mild chronic kidney disease or a more advanced. Now, if we extrapolate the same kind of data to the world population, we are looking at 7.8 billion people world over, out of which about 700 million are suffering from some degree of chronic kidney disease. So we in India, as we are being referred to as the diabetes hotspot, so look at the figures again. Roughly about 7 to 8% of the population is diabetic, and about there are about 30 to 50% chances of a diabetic to have some degree of chronic kidney disease during his or her lifetime. So that's what I meant when I said we were struggling with what diabetes was causing to our country, and we were barely able to manage and our strategies were all in that direction. That yes, we will not be able to, as a country, be able to cope up with the chronic effects of diabetes, the end stage effects of diabetes, the target organ damage effects of diabetes. So we have to focus predominantly on prevention of diabetes and hypertension and the lifestyle modification. So while we were there, comes in COVID-19, and our whole planning and everything has gone for a haywire. So now a developing country like ours is trying to come to terms as to how best we can do, and what has already happened in terms of COVID-19 scenario in the country, and the bigger fear, what is going to be the next couple of weeks, because everyone believes the next couple of weeks are going to be the deciding factors, the big challenge for the country as a whole.
Well, the interesting thing, I had heard that India had 300 million diabetics, or soon would, and that China had a similar number of 300 million. The US only has 20 million. So we're talking about combined India and China having 30 times more. Diabetics provide over 50% of dialysis patients. I'm a diabetic, so I've got a 50-50 chance of going on the machine. I think I have essentially a way of preventing diabetic and hypertensive kidney failure, something that should prevent 90% in dialysis. So far, nobody's asked me about it, although I've bothered them.
I would love to do that, David. I mean, in the national interest, I would love to do that.
Basically, I just goose people with quinapril, and I use Florinef to control their potassium. That's all I do.
Wow,
so,
really?
And it's a mg per pound per day quinapril. So if you weigh 200 pounds, you get 120 of quinapril in the morning, 80 at night, and you take Florinef up to daily, but then you need Lasix. You can take it Monday through Friday, and it doesn't cause salt and water retention, just potassium excretion. So that's dialysis solved. And COVID-19 is just going to be nasal steroids and prednisone. And maybe we can prevent with antihistamines.
Maybe an inhaler or something.
Yeah, Flonase.
Flonase, because and I had asked this in the very beginning, would this be a means to help solve it? Because I knew that it's an anti-inflammatory, but nobody would ever comment on it. They want to go to these extreme measures. And I've always learned as an engineer scientist that sometimes we think too much in our logical box for extreme answers, as opposed to just that simple one that's sitting on the tip of your nose. We overwork the problem, right? It's right here. We need to breathe. I use simple things as an anti-inflammatory, like oil of clove, which works as an anti-inflammatory in my body. I've discovered that with mint, and so I use that in my sinuses when they become extremely swollen now instead of the steroids, and it works. And my sinuses calm down. I can breathe for 8 to 10 hours, and
well, it might work for COVID. One of the first things that happens is you lose your sense of smell and therefore your sense of taste. And it's common for people with nasal polyps who are more likely than not to have asthma, that they can't smell either.
exactly.
And so I think what's happening is the virus is creating, it's sending out proliferative signals to eosinophils and other stuff in the nose to make polyps. And so if you can suppress that with mint or curcumin or all these other homemade remedies, so much the better.
Well, it's just something I've gotten used to over the years because I have so many medications pumped in my body. And listening to, unfortunately, diabetes is not one of my problems, but it is in the family. And listening to you talk has just been an eye opener because I understand the drugs and medications that you're talking about, but would love to understand more how you use them to replace or avoid dialysis, which is generally the end result for most diabetes. I never understood it, but it's a sad way to have to live a life. Sometimes you still get to live, and that's a good thing. But,
Kim, you missed taking the nephrology class that was offered in college. Remember that, or in high school?
I took science and engineering, not law or.
No. You missed that. You missed that class.
There are a few doctors in my field.
I skipped pathology in high school because, let me think. Oh, it wasn't offered. So yeah.
I went to a PhD graduation and spoke where I'm not a PhD in my field, but very few PhDs in the engineering field and doctors in the engineering field, but highly respected, trust me. But no, this is all awakening. Maybe it's something that you've known for quite some time, but it's not something that we hear about in the public. It would be great to make it more public news, maybe to even have a small series, Ankit, on diabetes and kidney dialysis and
nephrology. Yeah, because
so when we talk about the dialysis and nephrology, so I have a question for Dr. Dinesh Khullar that what are the guidelines patients should follow while doing the dialysis during the COVID, and maybe after COVID, how will be the life of the dialysis patient?
Well, that's something very interesting, and frankly speaking, as I said, we are evolving, and every day even the government of India is coming out with the guidelines, and they are revising it at regular intervals. So, because we need to know ourselves as to how best to do the dialysis of these patients. Now, it's very interesting question. You see, and of course, it's very dear to, it's very close to a nephrologist's heart because we have the responsibility of making sure that the people who are on dialysis, which actually is a lifesaver for them, how safely can they continue with their dialysis procedure. That's number one. We also have to look at the ways by which they can reach the dialysis unit during these testing times of the lockdowns. So that's one. At the same time, we have to pick up, because you see, there are two aspects to it. These people of ours, these patients of ours are immunocompromised. So maybe they have higher chances of catching the COVID-19 infection. So we have to, on one hand, prevent them from getting it. And God forbid, once they get it, if they have to, and the initial period when they are asymptomatic, they might actually be able to infect others who innocently would not even know that a given patient is infected or not. So it's a big responsibility on our shoulders, as I said, how to help them commute to and from the dialysis unit on one hand, how to make sure that they do not catch infection while in the hospital, and at the same time, the others do not catch infections from them, God forbid, if they had it. And then finally, we also have to be aware of the possibility that COVID-19 can cause kidney failure. So these will be people who had absolutely no kidney disease whatsoever to begin with. Now, because of the viral illness, they get kidney failure, and we have to plan for their dialysis. At the same time, there are people who become critically ill out of them, who have to be, as we had discussed,